think for us with Margins Music, it was a product of that community that, you know, we met Rob through, and that small cluster of people in Forward and those kind of places, and so that was a product of that environment really. You know, we'd started writing Margins Music in 2004, the beginnings of it date back to then, and so it's that kind of dubstep, grime, pirate radio, pre-internet kind of cluster, and obviously things have changed immensely after that, you know, after the acceleration of dubstep as a kind of global thing, and the bigger it got, the less we connected with it personally, and I think perhaps other people, like other producers from the scene, have managed to find their way longer in it, but for large bits of it we increasingly didn't relate to it, and still really treasured the values that were part of that scene in those times, but wanted to find them in other places or perhaps with other people. So we've just been just as inspired by UK funky, I think, and other sort of styles that have come along since then, or even to think back of styles that predated a lot of the stuff that people think of as dubstep now. So, you know, whether it's two-step or the darker side of two-step that became early dubstep and all those types of things. And now I think there's this really interesting place for us where you can kind of blend a lot of that stuff at and new tempos and new kind of spaces, and it feels really creative. And so I guess the Dasaflex was our attempt in that interim period to find those kind of new spaces and say, okay, well, with all these possibilities, which ones work for us? How do we interpret this and still keep what is the values that we had and the aesthetic we like, but yet also change? So retain some things, but also change, and that's what we've been trying to do. And I don't know, we'll see if it works. You've done some amazing collaborations on albums, I mean, as well as your own like solo albums. There's a kind of Shackleton album.
Got another one in the pipeline with.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether you want to talk about that.
Adrian Sherwood. No, I think it's fair game. Yeah, I quite enjoy working with other producers. I mean, to start with, I think one of the things that the first person I really sort of sat down and worked with on a sort of regular basis was Distance.
Yeah.
I got on with him well. Anyway.
Were you friends before that?
Just through the scene, but
yeah.
you know, would obviously got on very well, and decided to sort of sit down and make some tunes. And we decided to sort of set up this Deleted Scenes project. And for me, that was the first time I ever sort of sat and worked with someone. What I realised was, if a collaboration goes well, what you have is greater than the sum of the individual parts, insofar as you've got two discerning voices picking out problems. And it's, for me, that's like my own personal sort of approach to writing tunes. I like to make a big loop, throw in loads of ingredients, and then sit back and just start taking out all the bits that annoy me after a while. Like, if you listen to it for an hour or two and it's like, you can still keep going, it's like, yeah, you've got something good. And from my perspective, it's like having two points of view, and when you agree on stuff, not through compromise, not going, all right, well, you can have that hi-hat if I'm having this snare, but you know, it's not like some kind of marital scenario or something, but it's like, no, this snare's not right. Well, I think it's cool. It's like, all right, well, we'll find one we both think's cool, and then when you've got that, it's twice as strong in a way. And that's kind of one of the things I like about collaborations. And I mean, you know, the era of the bedroom producer, that's what we're living in, but traditionally people made music together and they bounce off people, you get vibes off people. When one person's tired in a room and you're sort of putting together a rhythm or whatever, someone else kind of take over for a bit, and you can sit back and you can go, yeah, no, I don't like that, no, all right, we'll find something that we both like, and then cool, you know, and you move on to the next bit.
But do you have to know them really well as a person for the track to come out well? Because I think there's a lot of like expectation sometimes in the scene, like, oh, this X producer who's really big and that producer's really good. If they add together, the track will be that good. And actually, often it's not. And because maybe they don't know each other very well, or whatever the reason is, but they're like, you know, I don't know if there's a natural synergy where, like, say, Ed Rush and Optical were good producers anyway, but they were the best producers together, and they could handle it by themselves, but somehow they added it. And I think it's because they got to know each other. Like, yeah,
I mean, you're going to struggle to make good music with someone that you don't get on with, but then the chances are you're not going to sit and make music with someone you don't get on with.
But even if, like, you wouldn't know that well, like, you might know lightly, like, you know, see him in a pub, whatever.
Yeah, well, I guess, I mean, in a situation where maybe you don't know someone as well, I guess what's a good thing to do is to sit and listen to a bunch of tracks that you both like, kind of, you know, for instance, like I did a couple of tunes with Photek. I didn't know him hugely well. I've met him before, hung out with him, and I got on with him, but you know, it wasn't someone I'd call up for a beer, you know, apart from the fact that he was living in LA. But you know, we sat down and we kind of like had a little YouTube battle. I was like playing him tunes that I liked, he was playing me tunes that are big influential tunes to him, and you know, after a little while you can start vibing off. It's like, okay, yeah, I can see where you're coming from with these things, and let's find a space that incorporates these things in a way that we both like. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of think it's a little bit open season to an extent. I don't think that culturally speaking, dance music is as tribalised as it ever was, and it used to be very separated, tribalised. Techno kids didn't like jungle, jungle kids didn't like techno. Now we've got a kind of much more encompassing kind of audience, if you like. People who are into the music are into all sorts of different things. There's a lot more information readily available and allows you to dip into things a lot more, but unfortunately that also means that you never maybe get as deeply involved with a particular strain or scene as maybe would have been the case. And there's an element of a lot of music that's coming out now just sounding aesthetically quite like just sort of elements of all sorts of aspects of dance music being pulled in to kind of create this sort of bastard dance music which sort of covers the mainstream quite neatly. But I think, you know, as people are moving away from vinyl and traditional methods of mixing, the tempo barriers are less of an issue, and whether or not, you know, I fully, I mean Ableton, all these kind of things, I don't think it's necessarily perceived in the same way that it would have been, where you have these kind of focus on particular strains. And I think it's a little bit sad in a way, because that's where, you know, you can really get somewhere particular with something and something new. Right now, I wouldn't say that, you know, I think that there's been a big movement, myself and yourself included, away from the 140 dubstep tempo. It's a given, it's going to have to sit in this tempo frame. People playing stuff slower, people doing sort of like, you know, autonomic drum and bass stuff, you know, flitting and floating around. But for me, I would like to see a situation where, you know, the dots are joined between sort of genres and subgenres of music in a different way. So, for an example, there's more in common for me between like a early Photek record and a basic channel record, which would be in you know, drum and bass and techno genres in the record shop. There's more in common between those two records than a Photek record and a DJ Fresh record. They're both in the drum and bass section. But there's less in common between those two tunes, mood-wise, anyway. So maybe we'll start moving to a situation where we're looking at the moods of music rather than the tempos.
For me, I think to summarise how I'd seen it, so you take the last 6 years, which I guess is like from the peak of, or the explosion of dubstep. I think what was great about that era and before of dubstep is you had, within the bounds of quite a small community, a massive, like one scene, a massive amount of variance and possibilities, and that's what was exciting about it. You had, you know, Malice percussive stuff, Loafers Dread, Scream's half step, like Koki's jump up, all these types of things in one scene, and then it just kind of totally exploded. And then after that,
going into jungle and happy hardcore,
and even past that now, you know, the last 2 or 3 years of like this total sort of crazy different areas of like juke and slow, fast, 80 BPM stuff, and all these different styles. And maybe, for me personally, I sense a feeling that people are bored of it just being a little bit schizophrenic, and I personally at least want a sense of focus again. And to me personally, I think people need to probably need to make their choices, and my choice I think is 130. And I feel there's, amongst a lot of artists that are perhaps under the radar currently, there's an awful lot of possibility again that reminds me of that 06 circle just emerging, where you can do stuff that's really percussive and really like feels fast, and also really slow and dread, really synthy and colourful, or really spaced out, and suddenly all of that's happening in the same tempo without it being pastiche of garage or UK funky or dubstep before. And that's definitely coalescing for me, and it feels like a just really satisfying sense of focus again. And there used to be with our Rinse show that you could say this was the 140 and this is the 130, and I just can't tell anymore now. Like, it just always one flowing one thing with like, and that's just really healthy and really exciting. And I just can keep trying to.
So what you're saying, that the tempo does or doesn't matter?
I think it matters intensely now. I think, and that sense of focus is coming from tempo. Is that we've been through that phase, and Dasaflex was about, let's try all different tempos. Like Martin's music was exactly 138. Even the bits of Rain and stuff were 138. Whereas Dasaflex with all different tempos, and that reflects the last 4 or 5 years of exploring other things, or the ways you describe it. And for me now, I think that arc's coming back. And personally, and for Keysound, I think that focus is around 130. And I think perhaps other people are trying 160 as well, and other things. But like, I personally are especially enjoying that tempo and the possibilities, and the way that you describe a photo record and a basic channel record having more in common than things. It feels like you can do that, but at the tempo as well. So, with different maybe beat patterns or styles or flavors, and I don't know, it's exciting. I'm really into it.